Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Shizune, Yugito and Hanabi. Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Naruto eventually got to finish his date with Sakura, but not after Tenten and Sakura's fight escalated. Naruto had finally managed to get home, and as he sneaked through the apartment he carefully cracked his door open, making sure there was no one waiting for him this time. He sighed with relief when there was no one in his room. He then heard a knock at the door and sighed softly. He dragged his feet behind him as he walked to the door and opened it slightly, and his face turned pale as he saw Gaara standing there. "Naruto, what's this I heard about you dating Temari?" Boy, Gaara didn't sound amused. He sounded as amused as Kakashi when someone took Icha Icha Paradise. "Gaara, I can explain." Naruto was tired, very tired, and Gaara decided now was the time to talk as he used his sand, albeit weaker now, to push the door open. "Then explain." The unamused redhead walked in and sat down at the kitchen table. Naruto quickly sat down, keeping a safe distance from Gaara. "I already know about the polygamy deal, but my problem is you." Naruto rubbed his temples, afraid of what Gaara would say next. He knew Gaara had a temper that matched Tayuya's, and that in itself was scary. "You didn't ask me to set you up at this." Naruto's jaw hung open in shock before his face hit the table. This couldn't have been any stranger. Gaara wasn't amused that Naruto didn't ask for help. "Naruto, you are going to make me the best man for the upcoming wedding, right?" Naruto just chuckled at this and smiled at his best friend. "Of course I am. Gaara, you're my best friend." With that the two laughed. No one had ever really heard Gaara laugh in a natural way. Only Naruto had ever heard this. The next day. Naruto had been free of harassment for a change, so he decided to go check out the mansion, since he would be living here quite soon. He heard a rustling in the nearby tree, and he looked up to see several of his friends hiding in the tree. "Shikamaru, shouldn't you be laying in the grass watching the clouds or something?" "Not with Ino acting so psycho, how troublesome. I pity whoever ends up teaching the children. You two spawn hyper and bossy," the lazy bum said before muttering about how it was a drag. Naruto shook his head and threw a pebble at Shikamaru, knocking the bum out of the tree. "What the hell, Naruto?" The lazy Shikamaru didn't enjoy injuring his pride. "I have enough on my plate today without you guys getting me dragged into decorating for my wedding." When he finished that sentence he received glares from Shino, Chouji, Shikamaru, and Kiba. "Dead him. He should be the one stuck with Britazilla all the time," Kiba loudly shouted. Naruto's face turned pale as he saw four of his friends cracking their knuckles ready to give Naruto a beatdown. Naruto quickly spun on his heel and began to run away as the four angry friends. He skidded as he rounded a corner and continued onward, trying to get away from them. Fortunately, alley was too wide for Akamaru and Kiba to run down, so they ran around to the other side of the alley and blocked it off. Naruto skidded to a stop and looked left and right as Kiba came from one side, Shino, Shikamaru, and Chouji from the other. He quickly ran up the side of one of the buildings, just in the nick of time, as the four pursuers crashed right into each other. The four quickly followed him up to the rooftops and began to chase after him again, and as they passed a billboard Naruto pulled away a cloak that he used to hide with as they chased his clone and laughed in a cheeky manner. The four turned and saw Naruto and began to chase him again. Naruto then jumped down into the street and began running faster, weaving between people trying to get away. He couldn't avoid crashing into a hugging Lee and Guy, and after the four pursuers passed the knockdown Lee and Guy, they too joined in the chase. Of course they shouted something about the flames of youth. Just then the pursuit passed Ino, Sakura, Temari, Tenten, and Hinata, causing them to give chase too. The five women looked absolutely furious as they began to chase those that wanted to hurt Naruto, even Hinata, and when the Hyuga heiresses angry watched the tuck out. Just then the Naruto they had all been chasing vanished. It turned out to be another Kage Bunshin, and the pursuit stopped, except for Guy and Lee, who kept running until they were standing in midair, and they looked down for a moment, then looked back. "Would you believe it?" the two said in monotone as they fell down to the river below. It would seem that Naruto was still the ultimate trickster. Meanwhile at the Hokage Tower. "Okay botch, and I'm here," and with that Tsunade sent him flying into the wall with a flick to the forehead. "Stop calling me that. I am not old," the Gondaime Hokage said with a twitching eye. "Now sit down and be good until she gets here." Naruto sat down in a chair, rubbed his forehead. Even if he could regenerate it still hurt. It wasn't like he possessed Guy's weird thick skull. His attention turned to a young girl who had just entered the room. When he saw her he began to freak out. A ninja from Kumagakure, what the hell was going on? The Cloud Ninja were enemies, or so he thought. "Naruto, it's been decided that you shall marry Yugito Nai, the girl sitting to your right, in 3 weeks. This is simply a political marriage to ensure a ninja war doesn't happen between the two villages." The Gondaime knew that this would be a chaotic situation. She could tell by the way the two were looking at each other, they didn't really trust the other. "This is the fearsome Uzumaki. He's no older than I am." The girl coldly and arrogantly made her point as she glared at Naruto. Well, excuse me, I didn't know you were expecting some stoic, possibly closet case. You have to look underneath the underneath. Naruto grinned at her and didn't even stop when she glared at him. Naruto. Show Yugito around the village for a while, help her get situated in her new home. Tsunade prepared to flick his forehead again if he tried to argue his way out of it. Hokage-sama. Naruto felt a chill run down his back when he was being polite to the old hag. But he didn't need another flick to the forehead. He stood up and walked to the door slowly. I'm ready whenever you are. Alright Uzumaki, but my safety is in your hands. Don't screw up. The girl coldly said as she walked out the door. Naruto quickly followed her, he didn't trust her very much, he felt like she would try to kill him while he slept. Sometime later. Okay, so I showed you the clothing store, the grocery store, the training grounds, the hospital, weapons store, and now the pinnacle of the village, Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto was glad the tour of the village was finally over. And what are those two? The blonde Kunoichi asked as she pointed at Konoha's strong yet most embarrassing ninja and another hug fest. My advice is try to ignore them when they do stuff like that, it's painful to watch. He gave a somewhat sarcastic look as he looked away from them. Just then Lee ran up to Yugito and went into the good guy pose. You are a vision of beauty. Will you be my girlfriend? The disturbingly energetic Taijutsu expert proclaimed. At this Yugito just blinked looking at the buggy-eyed Jonin. He was unusual, very, very unusual. Sorry, I'm engaged. She grabbed hold of Naruto's arm and pulled him close to her. This would be the only way to get the creepy, bug-eyed, and overly energetic ninja away from her. I see. That is why you are my eternal rival, Naruto. Your fires of youth burn more brightly than mine. I must try to be as youthful as you. With that, the annoying Lee ran off and began to run laps around the village. Naruto and Yugito simply watched with horror. I hope that weirdo will leave me alone now, Yugito didn't want to admit, but her skin crawled at the fact a guy with giant eyebrows was hitting on her. Maybe marrying this apparent dolt named Naruto wasn't so bad. Elsewhere. The Sunday. Watch as we present Britazilla vs everyone. Biba, get the podium in place, Shino stop playing with beetles and help set up the chairs, Sakura stop daydreaming about Naruto and do something helpful. And Gaara, or you just keep on doing whatever it is you're doing. Ino was once again ordering everyone around as she continued to be in Britazilla mode. Ino, calm down, you're starting to sound like a certain redhead, only you're not cussing yet. A dark-haired girl calmly said as she tried to mediate some peace in the clearing-turned-wedding hall. And I don't think that's such a good idea. 1 Ino is always this bossy and 2 Tayuya is right behind you. Now your life wasn't saved by Naruto just so Tayuya could kill you 7 years later. Chaoji quietly said before being struck over the head with a folding chair by Ino. Who are you calling bossy? Ino was on the rampage, fortunately Sakura snuck up and administered some sedative. This fortunately gave them a sigh of relief when Ino sat down in a chair, acted calmer. Okay, we have 2 hours before Britazilla returns. Get the chairs set up, get the decorations put in place, and for the love of the will of fire. Get them set up according to her plan. The pink-haired Kunoichi gave out the orders, then her attention shifted to Tenten sneaking away. Where do you think you are going? I have to get started cooking dinner for Naruto. Tenten then vanished, leaving a swirl of leaves. Sakura's eye twitched, simply because it took every fiber of her being to not attack Tenten. Sha. Who the hell does she think she is? It's bad enough I have to share Naruto with Ino Pig and the most timid girl in the village, but now Tenten, if I had my way, Naruto would be mine and mine alone. The inner Sakura was on a rampage. Sakura was still twitching with anger. And back with Naruto and Yugito. I guess I can stomach being married to you. It would seem you aren't as moronic as I had pegged you for. The blonde girl didn't seem to hold any punches. Despite the fact he acts like an idiot, he seems to be very warm. Something I never felt in Kumagakure. No, I have to keep focused on the mission. The Raikage wants Konoha's Uzumaki dead. Her thoughts were troubled and conflicted. She would have to kill Naruto, but she didn't see why. From all she could see, he was just a warm, compassionate man. Well, he practices polygamy, that's a bit weird, but other than that he's a nice guy. She would have to worry about the complications later. She could simply not go through with it. She was after all outside the Raikage's sphere of influence. I better show you home, Yugito. I have to be somewhere in a little bit. He froze in place when she glared at him. The very fact that he had a prior engagement seemed to make the Nibi's container exude immense jealousy. I will see you tomorrow though, so please don't be too angry. Okay then, Naruto, you better keep your word because I will find you and hold you to that promise. She smirked as he walked her to her accommodations. She didn't know why, but he seemed to respond well to threats, but that's because she didn't know about the other women in his life. Once they reached her apartment, she walked in and slammed the door in his face. Have a nice day, Yugito. He scratched his head in shock of what she just did. He thought she was warming up to him, but yeesh, that was harsh. He then decided to get ready for his dinner date with Tenten while he could. Hours later at Tenten's house. Naruto knocked at the door. He had a bouquet of flowers. He was ever the gentleman, especially when around Tenten, who was one of his closest friends. When the door opened he was visibly drooling. Not from the smell of good cooking, no, it was because Tenten was the vision of beauty. Who would have known that if she let her hair down and wore a Cheong-sam Chinese dress, she would be beyond beautiful. Naruto-kun. Hello. Tenten waved a hand in front of Naruto's face. She never knew this would happen. Heh. Sorry about that, Ten-chan. He smiled a tad, embarrassed of his drooling. Not that there was anything to be ashamed of. It just made him look a tad perverted, but given the fact that Tenten was a beauty under normal circumstances. Naruto just never saw her well dressed up, and there it happened he began to stammer much like the lovely Hyuga heiress. You look very lovely, Ten-chan. He blushed and handed her the bouquet of flowers. Tenten giggled and took the bouquet of flowers from Naruto. In all her years she had never seen him so shy. Hell, no one had ever seen him this nervous or quiet without Futorino around. It was for the most part funny. She then took his hand and led him into her apartment. She made him sit down on the couch and smiled sweetly at him. Sit there. I have to finish cooking supper. Naruto nodded while still blushing. He wondered if he had this kind of effect on Hinata, since she was prone to stuttering and blushing when he was around. He found that Tenten was having that effect on him. It was amazing. He had never seen Tenten in that light ever, but now she was a vision of beauty. Naruto realized the one thing that made him think. Her name was Tenten, and his birthday is October 10th. If he was like Neji once was, he would think it was destiny. Just then Naruto's eyes were covered. He leaned his head back and smiled softly. I wonder who is covering my eyes. He rubbed his chin and smiled happily. He knew it could only be the beautiful Tenten. Could it be the beautiful girl who invited me to dinner? Tenten giggled as she moved around to the front while keeping Naruto's eyes covered. She then sat on his lap and smiled sweetly as she uncovered his eyes. The food was ready, but she wouldn't pass up this chance to spend some much needed time with Naruto. She wouldn't get another chance like this. She leaned in slowly and planted a soft affectionate kiss on his lips. Dinner is ready, but I want to spend time with you. She smiled sweetly as she nuzzled her face into the blonde's neck. She seemed to be enjoying this moment for all it's worth. She looked deep into his eyes and smiled. She saw something that she could never see in the Hyuga prodigies: kindness. This was exactly what attracted her to Naruto in the first place. Let's have dinner, then we can return to this. Tenten smiled as she got off of Naruto's lap and helped him to his feet. She then led him to the table. There was quite the meal in front of them, all Chinese dishes, which was no surprise since Tenten seemed to enjoy the Chinese culture. And the two of them began to eat. The meal was quite loved by the blonde as Tenten had expected. The two of them were now sitting on the couch. Naruto's arm was around her shoulder and Tenten was practically glowing with happiness. She then moved so she was straddling his lap. Her eyes were looking deep into his as she leaned close and kissed him deeply. Naruto ran his fingers through her hair as he returned the kiss. His face turned red when Tenten started to kiss his neck. Ten-chan, we better stop before we go too far. He was cut off when Tenten put a finger to his lips. I won't hear any of that, Naruto Uzumaki. She grabbed his hand and led him to her room. Now this would not be the first time the QB container had done something intimate with a girl. In fact, Naruto's first time was with his fiancée, one Ino Yamanaka. It was a few months back, but that's a special SS class secret that no one needs to hear about, especially her father. I want for you to make love to me tonight, Naruto-kun. I love you and I know that if I didn't dance around the subject, I would have been your girlfriend sooner, so please do this for me. I want you to be my first. Needless to say, that night there was a fair amount of racket coming from Tenten's apartment. Of course, the good news was Tenten's apartment was soundproofed, so not much of the noise escaped. This hopefully wouldn't come around to bite him on the ass, hopefully. The next day at some point, Naruto and Tenten had spent a good part of the night making love. Tenten was sleeping soundly and with a smile on her face that put his to shame. It was safe to say that Naruto did a good job. He was also sound asleep, meaning for the first time he might have become exhausted. All he knew was he enjoyed it and he didn't know some of the things they did were even possible. Wake up, Naruto-kun, it's already noon, the brunette cooed softly as she tried to wake Naruto up. She quickly gave up though and just snuggled close. It was too comfortable to bother not being like this. She then closed her eyes and just continued to rest with her lover, feeling complete when she was with him. It was futile to even bother getting out of bed, but then paradise was lost when Guy and Lee made a dynamic entrance into her room. Guy-sensei. Tenten has done something most unyouthful. Lee cried out in shock to find his teammate and friend sharing the same bed. Don't look, Lee. Tenten has done something she should have waited until she was married to do. Guy quickly commented before the two hugged and began to cry. This was enough to wake Naruto up. His eyes had gone cupid. No, wait, he was just tired. Get out of this room now or I will hit you with Futen Rasengan. Naruto quickly threatened as he sat upwards. This of course caused Lee and Guy to leave Tenten's apartment in fear. Naruto muttered about idiots in spandex and snuggled close to Tenten wanting to get some rest. The next day. Naruto having fully rested up left Tenten's apartment early at the crack of noon. He hadn't expected that to tire him that much, but it had. He was hoping he wouldn't run into Yugito though he promised to spend yesterday with her, but considering the situation it couldn't be helped. Then it happened she grabbed him by the collar of his coat and dragged him away. "You owe me a date, Naruto." "Yes, Yugito dear," he sighed as she dragged him off. "Another day, another impossibly crazy situation." Speaking of which, he had promised Tayuya he would meet her for drinks tonight. He'd better get something for the hangover then. "This place looks good." She pointed to the sign, and Naruto saw it was the sushi restaurant, not exactly his cup of tea. But if it would make her chill out then so be it. Once in the restaurant Naruto looked at the menu for a while and just decided to go with whatever looked best. "I saw the freaks running out of your girlfriend's house screaming about unyouthful things so I knew you were there. I could have dragged you of there but the container of the Nekomata blushed deep red. She simply didn't feel ready to see him naked. But if you stand me up ever again I will hurt you. You promised to take me to dinner yesterday after all." I know Yugito-chan but I was really tired. I won't stand you up ever again." He was simply afraid that she would hurt him next time he did it. "Wait, did I just call her Yugito-chan? I hardly know her." He saw her face become a deeper shade of red. He then blushed softly. He wondered what it was about her that reminded him of a cat. There was the fact she had slanted eyes and a love of fish. "You sure like sushi, Yugito-chan. Like you have room to talk, Naruto-kun. I heard you inhale ramen like it's going out of style." She quipped with a smirk, then she realized she called him Naruto-kun. She had no clue why, but she was finding herself growing fond of this boy who looked like he was a fox. What she didn't know was she had more in common with him than that. Sometime later after she had tried every kind of sushi. "Thank you for a wonderful day, Naruto-kun." She then kissed him on the cheek and walked off. Naruto just stood there staring in disbelief of what had just happened. The girl he just met had started to warm up to him. He checked his watch then and saw it was time to get to the bar for drinks with Tayuya. And he simply groaned some. He wondered how the redhead acted when she was drunk. Maybe he would be lucky and she would be a happy drunk. It after all did wonders for Tsunade. She seemed a lot friendlier when she was drunk so long as you don't call her Bachan. At the bar. "Naruto. About time you got here, numbnuts." That wasn't as bad as the usual insult she used. He saw the empty bottle of something on the bar and could only guess. He sat down next to her and asked for a bottle of tequila. "Don't ask, I just like tequila." "The whatever," Naruto cheerfully said and downed some of the strong alcohol, and he coughed slightly. "Man, that shit burns. I knews I could corrupt you sooner or later." Tayuya's language was slurred slightly due to her inebriated state. Several rounds and toasts later. The duo slinked out of the bar, hanging off of each other. Naruto was less intoxicated than the redeed. Tayuya giggled like a schoolgirl as she looked at Naruto. "Can you keep a secret?" "I guess I can try." "What's your secret?" Naruto stumbled some as he walked Tayuya home. He was starting to feel the alcohol, though slightly his metabolism worked a bit faster. "I'm in love with a guy named Naruto but when I's around him I just end up gushing at him and scares him." She smiled in her drunken state. She then looked at Naruto and realized it was him and giggled again. "Oops, guess I told him." Haha. Tayuya's apartment the next morning. Needless to say they finally reached her apartment, but the two were so drunk they threw all sense of restraint to the wind and ended up having sex that night. But now it was morning and nothing like that reaction to knowing you did that with someone you didn't expect. The neighbors sure knew what was going on since the girl pretty much advertised it. "Where am I?" Naruto muttered quietly as he looked around the room. He then saw a female figure lying on top of him. He blushed, yet became ghostly pale at the same time. Not exactly how he wanted that evening to go. He had no plans of waking up in bed with Tayuya the next morning. He just hoped he didn't do anything stupid. The redhead looked up and saw Naruto under her, and she turned red, both in anger and embarrassment. She looked around for her flute to hit him over the head, but she couldn't find it. Just then she shouted 3 words and 3 words alone. "What the fuck?" These of course were punctuated with 1 word said in unison. "Ouch." The hangover was there, and it would seem even hangovers affected Jinchurikis. Naruto sighed and held his head. This was going to be a very strange day since tomorrow he was getting married. Hopefully nothing bad would stick with him today, cause this was a bad situation for him. Very bad. No one wanted to wake up next to Tayuya after a night of heavy drinking. Why did I suggest drinks? Man, I screwed up big this time, and QB if you say it, I will have the Iro-sen and apply the 5-element seal. Naruto sat up slowly, almost fell out of bed, but decided to lie back down. Why did he suddenly have to have such good luck with women? Naruto and Tayuya were looking away from each other. They were in shock of what had happened. Naruto was holding his head from the last rampaging cussing and threatening Tayuya had just gone through. "Please not so loud, Tayuya-chan. It really isn't necessary to shout that much. Well, you're the one who fucked up and got us so drunk, look what happened, we ended up fucking. Tayuya began to curse Naruto out again, she seemed to enjoy making Naruto suffer. It wasn't entirely his fault anyways, partly it was her fault that she cussed so much, and a bar would be the only place she could cuss. Well, if you would clean your language up, I would have taken you to dinner. Naruto retorted as he looked over at the redhead and glared. She was always seemed to argue with Naruto, but it was her strange way of showing that she loved him. She didn't fight with anyone else, just Naruto, he seemed to be special. Tayuya sat up and looked at Naruto, giving him a strange look. It wasn't her normal pissed off expression. It was almost a lustful look. She then grabbed him by the back of the head and kissed him passionately. Naruto went wide-eyed by this action, since he hadn't been expecting that. Apparently Tayuya liked conflict. She broke the kiss for a moment and looked at him, smiling in a seductive manner. I've been waiting for you to talk back to me. I can clean my language up if I wanted, but I was waiting to see you have what it takes to talk back to me. Tayuya said as she reached down under the covers and grabbed hold of Naruto's balls and smirked. You sure have the balls to talk back to me. That's good, cause the size matches your balsiness. He rolled over and stared at the ceiling for a moment before closing his eyes. He was startled somewhat when the redhead snuggled up against him. He then knew he wasn't hallucinating when the girl punched him in the arm. I had no idea you were packing, shithead. And if I end up pregnant, you will marry me. She quickly threatened the blonde before kissing him softly. Naruto grinned sheepishly, only because he didn't like the tone she was using. It sounded more like a blackmail threat than a do the right thing tone. Naruto sighed, knowing this was another complication in his life, as if things couldn't get more insane. Naruto knew they probably would. After Naruto had recovered, Naruto headed out the front door of Tayuya's apartment. He was whistling calmly, he had no fear whatsoever. Of course it was around noon now, which meant he could go get lunch. He was walking along, his whistling had turned into humming when an unexpected occurrence popped up. The Gaara, normally shy and timid, grabbed hold of Naruto's arm. Naruto's face turned bright red when he felt her ample breasts push against his arm. He immediately began to fidget like she always did. This was a nerve-wracking situation, he couldn't keep the girls off him. He wondered why Hinata was being so bold. Maybe the thought of not having to be so worried around him gave her courage, who knows. Naruto-kun, I made you some lunch. I was hoping that we could have lunch together. The Gaara was still timid around the boy she had been in love with since Kami knows when. She then began to fidget and the two stood there fidgeting. Someone would have to break the silence. It was considered a sign of the end times for Naruto to be quiet without meeting Ramen. Over the years Naruto had witnessed as Hinata went from being the cute girl who couldn't talk to him without fainting to being a beautiful girl who couldn't talk to him without fainting. He smiled cheerfully at her and kissed her cheek. He chuckled when he saw her face turn red in slow motion. Thanks Hinata-chan, I'm really hungry. He said this with the ever-present smile he was known for, but unlike the one he had over the years, it was genuine. Hey, alright, come on Naruto. Hinata pulled on Naruto's arm, leading him off towards the Hyuga compound. Naruto simply acted as Hinata lead him to the Hyuga compound. Naruto was wondering if this sudden boldness probably has something to do with the fact that Hinata and Ino were fast becoming friends. The thought of Ino influencing Hinata made Naruto feel like someone just walked over his grave. Of course it wouldn't hurt for Hinata to be less shy and timid. In fact, it drove Naruto crazy whenever the girl stuttered. Yet her shy nature is what made her attractive. She was a nice contrast to the other women in Naruto's life. In fact, if Naruto wasn't so certain that Hiashi would have killed him, he probably would have asked Hinata out on a date. Naruto found himself sitting at the end of a table. He half expected her family to be there to make judgments. He had of course been surprised by the meal Hinata had prepared. He simply blinked at what was in front of him. It amazed him that sweet girl he knew was such a talented cook. He didn't expect such a feast from her. Ramen, steak, tempura, and onigiri for dessert. Naruto simply stared at the steak, he never saw it before. Hinata-chan, you really didn't have to do that much for me, Naruto shyly said. He just expected a meal of ramen. Naruto-kun, in another week we will be husband and wife, so I want to make sure you are well fed. Hinata blushed as she finished that sentence. She then began her famous fidgeting as she looked at Naruto. She had her own food set in front of her, though her portions were much smaller than Naruto's. She smiled sweetly as she waited for Naruto to begin eating. She knew there was a risk with cooking him something he isn't used to. Naruto carefully cut into the steak. He had never had a steak, mostly because this was considered rich people food. He really never had the money to buy it, so he was going to enjoy it. He then chewed the meat. It amazed him simply because he had no idea steak was that good. Perhaps there were other foods beside ramen that were delicious. Wow, Hinata-chan, your cooking is great. Naruto managed to say, though almost muffled by him devouring the food. Arigato, Naruto-kun, she replied quietly as she quietly ate her meal. She was relieved that Naruto loved the meal, but she waited for him to try the ramen. She had her fair share of competition in the ramen area since she had heard Haku has a recipe and she had heard that Naruto was engaged to Ichiraku and Ichiraku was the best ramen stand in the village. In truth, Naruto had two types of women in his life, the anti-ramen establishment and the make Naruto happy establishment. Ino was of course the leader of the anti-ramen group due to the fact she thought it was fattening and unhealthy. Hinata's eyes lit up with joy when Naruto began to eat the ramen she had prepared with great enjoyment. It was all she could have asked for. She didn't want her ramen to be better, but that it made Naruto happy. Naruto found that he really enjoyed the tempura. For some reason he liked the way deep-fried food tasted. It was after all the male factor. It was a known fact that guys liked greasy food. Eventually. I'm impressed, Naruto-kun. You ate everything. Hinata gasped in amazement as she held her hands to her mouth. She hadn't expected Naruto to eat all that, including the extra she had prepared. Of course Naruto had eaten way too much. He was laying on back groaning. Too much food. He quietly muttered as he looked at the ceiling. At this rate we're going to be as fat or big-boned as Chouji. Naruto-kun, you didn't really have to eat all of it. Hinata spoke with a concerned look on her face. As she looked at Naruto, he was known to overdo it sometimes. Needless, Hinata wasn't surprised. She then gave him a digestive aid since she didn't want to see him in such discomfort even if it was his entire fault. Once Naruto was feeling better, he sat up and pulled Hinata into a hug. Immediately her face turned bright red. She was shocked by this. She just blushed since she wasn't quite used to Naruto showing her affection. I love you, Naruto-kun. She finally managed to say it, though she felt like fainting when she finished the sentence. I know, Hinata-chan, I somehow always knew, but you always fainted when I tried to talk to you. Naruto softly replied as he held the ever-shy girl close. He felt her jump in shock and expected it. He had come to know her mannerisms. Don't be so jumpy, Hinata-chan. Hi, Naruto-kun. The wide-eyed Hinata meekly replied to her fiancé. She looked up into his vibrant blue eyes timidly. Her heart felt like it was beating 1,000 times a minute. She would probably always stutter. It's what made her unique, but hopefully she would get over the habit of fainting all the time. I will try to stop fainting all the time, Naruto-kun. Thanks, it's kind of hard to talk to you when you faint all the time, Naruto cheerfully said with a grin on his face. He then kissed her ever so lightly and stopped there since he expected her to freeze when he kissed her. The pale princess was turning the most interesting shade of red from the attention she was receiving from her first and only crush. The crossed town. Now which puppy will Naruto-kun just melt over? Hana Inuzuka was examining puppies from a litter of puppies. She was planning to win the boy over with a puppy. Guys usually do that with girls, so who says a girl can't do the same? She then spotted a tan and black colored puppy and smiled. You seriously think you have a chance, sis? I don't see why all you girls are crazy about him. Kiba muttered quietly. He was glad he finally had a reprieve from Bridezilla attacks, at least until Hyuga Bridezilla struck. Then again, Hinata is normally quiet. She couldn't be as horrible as Ino was. Or could she? Shut up, Kiba. You're just jealous because Hinata never saw you that way. Hana smirked as she picked up the puppy, which was probably the most adorable one of the litter. Kiba simply glared. He didn't like admitting he lost to Naruto, even if the two had become friends. It drove him crazy that Naruto had turned out to be such a pimp. But maybe Kiba could score some of the overflow girls. It couldn't hurt to ask Naruto to send a few Kibas where right. Now if you will excuse me, I have to go track Naruto down. Hana then abruptly left with the small puppy in her arms. Kiba's eye twitched as he fell into a chair. This was beyond crazy. It was just like the days of the academy almost, except Naruto had become God's gift to women. Needless to say, Kiba was quite jealous. The plotting continues. Naruto had been leaving Hyuga compound when it happened. He felt a cold chill run down his spine. He felt killing intent. No, it was more frightening than that girlfriend intent. The very thing Naruto justly feared, the unwanted attention of girls. He slowly turned to look at who was behind him and he petrifies, long dark hair with a girly ribbon. It was Kin. Naruto-kun. The dark-haired girl called out as she latched onto Naruto's arm. He only grumbled since he needed at least 10 minutes alone from the women. Is that so much to ask? A little time to be alone and think? Not that it was so bad getting affection from Kin. She was quite the looker and she always was. Yes, Kin-chan. Naruto sighed softly. He was exhausted from everything today. He needed a nap. Before he could start to complain, he was being pulled away by the dark-haired girl. He groaned in exasperation. Relax, I'm just taking you somewhere so you can rest for a moment before Bridezilla gets a hold of you again, Kin calmly explained as she led Naruto off to someplace the army of girls would never think to look for Naruto, her apartment. Unlike some of the women, Kin was a bit more patient. After all, Naruto was someone she had her eye on for a while. So tired, so very tired, Naruto mumbled quietly. It was mostly his fault anyway, considering who he had been doing lately. Kin had helped him into her apartment and helped him lay down on the couch. She could only imagine how exhausted the normally energetic Naruto was. Naruto's head was resting in Kin's lap, not like he could complain, all he knew was Kin was going to allow him to rest. When I first met you I just thought you were a noisy, obnoxious, hyperactive runt. The dark-haired beauty began as she stroked Naruto's head affectionately, trying to get him relaxed so he could sleep. But when you dragged me out of that hospital room and hid me in your old apartment, at first I was upset, but when it turned out you saved me. I know. Naruto mumbled as looked up at the dark-haired girl. She was definitely calmer than Tayuya, which was good for Naruto. The calm ones balanced out the psychopaths, and Naruto surely attracted the psychopaths. Naruto felt his eyes growing heavy. This is nice. Naruto then gave into the comfort and drifted into a nap. There you go Naruto-kun, just rest. I'll keep you safe from the crazy girls. Kin smiled and relaxed, letting Naruto rest. It was her little tactic to make Naruto fall for her. She smiled slyly since she could understand that Naruto needed some time away from the insanity. No more dating for you. Ino will kill you if you don't show up for the wedding tomorrow. And I won't get my chance to date you if she does that. Of course, out in the village there were girls stalking the streets, looking for the knucklehead turned god's gift to Kunoichi. A cute medic nin wearing a black kimono, a wind mistress, a pink-haired beauty, a veterinarian with a puppy, and a psychopathic bride. Naruto was lucky Kin took him to the one place the lunatics would think to look. Naruto was safely tucked away, and Kin wasn't going to let anything bad happen to Naruto for now. Kin was a bit selfish like that, but what did you expect? Naruto was the most desired man in the village. It came with the territory, and Naruto couldn't do anything to stop it until he said no more, and he was a glutton for pain. For now the dates would have to wait. He was getting married tomorrow, and that was something to make sure to stay on top of. Naruto had been able to rest for a few hours in the comfort that Kin had offered him. He then opened his eyes abruptly and sat up as he remembered he had a bachelor party to attend. Nah. You aren't going anywhere. Kin shouted out as she held Naruto fast, preventing him from escaping. But. Bachelor party. Naruto whined since he had hoped to go to the stripper-free bachelor party. The girl shot him a stern look and pointed to poster of Ino that Ino had made to strike fear into Naruto. It featured a grouchy-looking Ino cracking her knuckles with the words "Don't be late" in large letters. She made that poster and put it over the village in case you got ideas about partying tonight and showing up late for the wedding. She will destroy us all if you're late. Kin explained while she exclaimed about it. Of course Naruto cringed some since he knew his bride-to-be would rampage if he was late. I never thought about it that way. Naruto didn't want to see Ino go berserk if he didn't show up. He wanted to avoid that at all costs, so he settled down on the couch. He figured the bachelor party could do well without him. I bet you don't recognize this place anymore. Kin began, for her apartment was in fact the apartment where Naruto had lived for a portion of his life until Haku and Zabuza had come to live in the village. It had indeed been changed in the years since he had lived there. Of course it was the feminine touch from Kin that made it much better. At first it was hard getting used to life in the village, but I got used to the fact that daily life wasn't a test. Of course some villagers didn't like me at first because I was from Itagakure, but you helped me through those hard times when you came and helped me with my chores when you had free time. Naruto nodded his head and smiled softly at the dark-haired girl. It was true he took care of Kin because he took it upon himself to help other people. He wanted to be the Hokage after all, and it was practice for him. It never dawned on him back then that Kin may have had feeling for him, but when her personality became more distant after he started to date Ino. He still had no idea that the girl was fond of him, but that was quickly clarified when the girl moved and straddled Naruto's lap, looking him dead in the eyes. I still haven't thanked you for helping me out. Kin smiled softly and leaned forward, kissing Naruto softly on the lips. He didn't fight it, though he had come to terms with the fact he somehow became the pimp Kage. He simply wrapped his arms around the girl as he returned the kiss softly, but that's when a knocking on the door was heard and the moment was killed. From the other side of the door barking was heard, which meant Hana had somehow managed to track down Naruto. Open up Kin, I know you have Naruto. I'm not going to molest him or anything, I just want to give him a puppy. Hana said through the door. Of course Naruto sighed in grief because a perfect moment was spoiled. Kin stood to her feet and walked to the door and looked through the peephole to make sure Hana was truthful on the matter. Sure enough, she was holding a puppy, so Kin opened the door to let Hana in. Here you go Naruto-kun, I wanted you to have the pick of the litter. He reminds me of you. Ambitious and energetic. She smiled sweetly as she handed Naruto the little puppy. The puppy immediately licked Naruto's cheek, causing Naruto to chuckle. Hana smiled and walked back to the door, keeping her word. And if Bridezilla tells you, you can't keep him, tell me, I will give her a piece of my mind. Hana smiled as she walked out the door, leaving Naruto to blink some as he looked at the puppy. What should I name you? How about Kamaboko? Naruto grinned, and Kin giggled since she thought it was funny how his mind was always fixated on ramen. The puppy just wagged its tail and yipped at Naruto happily. Naruto-kun, you could give him a better name than that. Give him a name that doesn't sound like you were hungry. Kin knew Naruto was probably hungry, so she walked off to the kitchen and began to prepare some instant ramen. One of the finer things in life that Naruto got her indoctrinated to. Naruto was busy playing with a puppy. It was a total guy thing, every guy wanted a puppy at some point, it was the perfect girl magnet too. He rubbed his chin and thought as he looked at the pup. I'll just call you Tayumeru. Naruto smiled and pet the pup's head. That's a better name, Naruto-kun, Kin called out as she brought some instant ramen over to Naruto. It would also seem that all the women in his life would prevent him from doing stupid things, but that comes with every girl, they make sure men don't do something foolish. The two began to eat their instant ramen, though it wasn't as good as Haku or Ichiraku's ramen. But it was instant, and that was good enough as he inhaled it. Eventually Naruto finished his ramen. He had learned to slow down his eating since it was bad manners. I better get going, Kin-chan, I have to get a good night's rest, Naruto yawned out as he stood up with Tayumeru fast asleep in his arms. He of course used henge to transform into a disguise that would allow him to get home fast. The form he chose was that of the guy girls didn't want to chase anymore. Sasuke Icha. Now remember, act emo, act like you're better than everyone. And we can get home with ease. Naruto told himself mentally as he began to walk out the door. Naruto made his trek home with no problem, and when he reached the front door, he released the transformation and grinned walking inside. Of course, once he got inside there was a squeal from Haku at the puppy he was holding. It's so cute. Haku clasped her hands together and looked at the puppy Naruto was holding. The pup quirked one of its ears as Naruto raised one of his eyebrows. Haku, I never saw this side of you, it's so. Well, girly, Naruto bluntly said as Haku blushed deep crimson since she had never acted so girly ever. Naruto handed the puppy over to her so she could hold it since she thought it was so cute. His name is Tayumeru. So cute. Haku squealed yet again as she cuddled the puppy as she held it. Naruto just blinked at the peculiar way his roommate turned girlfriend was acting. He shrugged it off and walked to his room and crawled into bed. Tomorrow he was getting married, so he had to get some rest. The next morning. Naruto fell out of his bed as it had been established he hated morning. He dragged himself to the bathroom and knocked this time. He looked down the hall and saw Haku playing with Tayumeru, so he walked into the bathroom and took care of getting cleaned up. He didn't have to exactly leave for the place the wedding was taking place for a few hours. So how was he going to kill the time? Training was a question, eating ramen too, what could he do? His eyes were wandering over to Haku every time he was trying to think of something. Gah. Iro Sennin has infected me with lecherous thoughts. Naruto began to mentally scream at himself. Then in the mindscape of Naruto. Come on, Kit. You know you want to have your way with her. The QB roared out as Naruto began to twitch his right eye. He was getting tired of this overly horny fox telling him to do things. Shut up, you perverted fox. Ino would kill me if I got laid before the wedding. Naruto responded as he glared at the fox. He was getting tired of the constant perversion from every direction. Back in reality. Arghh, I'm so bored, how am I gonna kill 2 hours? Naruto yelled in frustration as he held onto his head. Haku began to grin. She had a few ideas how the two of them could kill a few hours. Of course Naruto began to feel a chill down his spine. He didn't feel comforted by that grin. Oh, Naruto-kun, I know how we can kill some time, it's something I've been wanting for a while. She grabbed hold of Naruto's arm and pulled him into her room. No. Naruto cried, but it was too late. There was no escaping the clutches of the beautiful young woman he lived with. 1.5 hours later, oh yeah. Naruto and Haku were lying in bed next to each other. Naruto was staring at the ceiling with a stupid grin on his face. I may end up dead, but at least I'll be happy, Naruto replied. For someone who didn't like the idea in the first place, he felt mighty proud of himself. Haku snuggled close to Naruto. She smiled contentedly as if she had fulfilled her wildest dreams. Naruto-kun, you're an animal, Haku quietly commented, looking a bit flushed from the activity. But the moment was quickly over as Naruto saw what time it was and rushed to the bathroom to clean up. He couldn't very well show up smelling like he just had sex. Haku sighed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't like that the moment was over. Oh well, I'll get more time with you at some point, Naruto-kun. Later at the ceremony location. Naruto was dressed in his clan robes, which had the same spiral design that his other outfits had. Of course it was orange with black hakama. He was not quite used to the way these clothes felt. He of course still had a stupid grin on his face, not the famous one, the one that basically just said he got laid. Naruto, you have this stupid grin on your face. You look like you did. Jiraiya couldn't have been more proud of his student. Of course pride was placed in the wrong place. But I suggest you not grin like that. Women tend to not like it if you slept with someone else on your wedding day. Naruto nodded his head and shifted it into his usual grin, which wouldn't get him killed. He looked out into the clearing, seeing the people file in slowly. He was amazed at how many people were showing up. Wow, a lot of people. Good thing we didn't write our own vows. I couldn't recite that stuff in front of all these people. Naruto, let's hope this wedding doesn't get too loud or insane. Then again, I'm full rested, Gaara commented, being the ever-pleasant Kazekage that he was known to be. Naruto had to slap himself though, since he was starting to get nervous, and who would blame him, he was about to get married. Calm down kid, nothing is gonna go wrong. Brittazilla made sure everything was going to go as planned. Shikamaru calmly said as he stepped forward. That troublesome woman is making sure you don't run away, so I have to use my clan's jutsu to hold you in place if you try to run away. At which point we tie you up and the wedding goes on as planned. But Naruto, why do you like these troublesome women? I dunno, I guess they have something I like. They keep me on my toes and they keep me in line. Naruto grinned some, about ready to walk out to the altar where he was supposed to wait. Bad news. Tsunade-sama got drunk. Shizune declared as she ran up to the front of the area. Fortunately Jiraiya was there to do the ceremony, question is would they let him? I can do it. Jiraiya declared as he walked out and stood at the altar where Tsunade would be, and everyone was frightened, very frightened. There were children present, for crying out loud. Relax. There is a time and place for perversions, today isn't one of those times. Naruto decided to take his place in front of the altar and decided it was time to get things started. That's when the traditional wedding march began to play, and first Sakura walked out and took her spot off to the side, then the shy Hinata. Gaara and Shikamaru were standing beside Naruto, and then that's when Inoichi walked in leading his daughter up to the front. It almost looked as if he was going to cry. You may be seated, Jiraiya spoke, and everyone took their seats. This was probably the most joyous occasion in all of Konoha in some time. The next Hokage was getting married, and Tsunade was passed out in the back. We are here to observe as Naruto Uzumaki and Ino Yamanaka begin the great journey of their lives. Although, this will be the first step in a much more perilous journey for Naruto. We look on in admiration for their commitment for one another. Now, for the exchanging of vows. Jiraiya finished the opening sermon deal and pointed to Naruto. He wasn't the kind to make a happy day into a drawn-out showboating occasion. I, Naruto Uzumaki, take Ino Yamanaka to be my loving wife, in sickness and in health till death do us part, Naruto began as he gazed longingly at Ino as he held her hands in his. The people witnessing this were all shocked to say the least, since they never expected Naruto to conduct himself seriously. For all the days we shall be together, I shall love you, my partner and my wife. I will always love you, now and forevermore. Jiraiya then pointed to Ino since it was her turn to speak her vows. It was amazing that Jiraiya had conducted himself seriously, since he was a pervert. They had all expected him to open up with something about how Naruto is going to live out every man's fantasy. I, Ino Yamanaka, take Naruto Uzumaki to be my loving husband, in sickness and in health till death do us part. For all our days, not matter how hard they be, I shall always love you, my partner and my husband. Now and forevermore. Ino smiled happily at Naruto as she finished speaking her vows, though she said hers slightly different. She was so happy she didn't seem to take notice that her bridesmaids were ogling Naruto. Talk about unusual weddings. Work together as shinobi and kunoichi, but more importantly as husband and wife. It is only through the partnership of husband and wife that you two can achieve true harmony. Now if anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. Jiraiya spoke. No one did, but one Sasuke Uchiha who was raising his hand. Besides Sasuke Uchiha, who is just jealous. Jiraiya interjected, and since there were no further objections. If there are no further objections, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Naruto and Ino just did that, kissing each other passionately but not deeply. It wasn't vulgar either. It was just a simple passionate kiss between husband and wife. Of course shinobi didn't exchange rings when they got married since they got in the way of their job. The two broke from their kiss smiling happily, and Jiraiya turned them to face the well-wishers. I present Naruto and Ino Uzumaki. And then the Toad Sage pushed the two newlyweds forward, sending them down the aisle as people cheered. Once outside, all the women gathered up, but it was a competition between the women that wanted to be the next bride of Naruto that gathered. Ino turned around and threw her bouquet over her shoulders. Naruto and the other guys just winced at the horror that is women fighting over the wedding bouquet. Ouch, that's gonna leave a mark. Naruto yelled as he saw Sakura punch a girl for trying to grab the bouquet, but eventually it was decided. The winner of the bouquet toss by sheer will was Haku. I did not see that happening. If I can have your attention please everyone. We will be gathering at the Shodai dining hall for the reception, Naruto called out as he and Ino headed off ahead of everyone else. But the second round of the bouquet obtaining contest was beginning. Haku had to maintain ownership of the bouquet for a bit longer before she was the real winner. This is to determine who is deserving of Naruto more. Called out one of the girls as the fight began anew. At the dining hall. You actually got me some ramen for the reception. I never expected you to do that for me, Ino. Naruto said with a smile. Ino smiled in return despite her hate of the fattening food. She liked Naruto to be happy. If serving noodles was the way to do it, she got off easy. Only for you, Naruto-kun. Ino smiled softly at her husband as they walked to their table and sat down. The feast of course was an incredible one, but they couldn't start till the guests arrived. The champion of the bouquet toss was decided. Man, that was hilarious. Who knew Hinata could fight like that? She must really want to marry Naruto or something. Kiba called out as he laughed while they walked into the dining hall. Hinata wasn't far behind as she staggered and looking battle-worn, she held up the bouquet like a victorious conqueror until she was tackled by Hana, who took it away. The contest begins anew. Kiba shouted as they watched the women start fighting over the bouquet again, but it quickly ended when Tayuya snatched it from Hana. No one dared to try and take the bouquet away from a temperamental redhead, no one except Temari. Okay, that's enough of the bouquet fight. Naruto shouted to the girls as Anko leaped in and took the bouquet away. Anko quickly lost it to Kurenai, who used Genjutsu, and she lost it to Shizune. Naruto's eye twitched as he watched the contest continue on, apparently they were deciding still. But it all ended when a battle-scarred Hinata and Haku ended up taking the bouquet from Shizune at the same time. The bouquet was torn in half. Okay, it's over now, I shall marry Naruto-kun next. Hinata said as she caught her breath before she noticed Haku had the other half. That's enough girls, it's not that important, you will all get to marry me at some point, Naruto calmly explained as the girls watched each other as if paranoid. Naruto sighed some, it was quite the scene. But now they could eat. A bit later. Naruto had eaten his fair share of food and was sighing contentedly, that's when Tayuya walked up to the table. Naruto wondered what she had wanted, he could only imagine the horror she was about to unleash upon him. Naruto, I'm pregnant. The redhead blurted out and Naruto just became a pillar of stone at the 3 words. Naruto then fall face first right into a piece of wedding cake. Hanabi, a daddy, he mumbled out as he was still in shock, he had no idea that this would happen. He really had no idea, and that's when Ino grabbed him by the ear. Sweetie, were cheating on me before you were told to marry several women? Ino asked as she twisted his ear. No. Ah. Naruto cried out in pain as his wife twisted his ear. Actually, bimbo, it all happened 2 nights ago, we went drinking and the next morning we were in bed together. And he will marry me. Tayuya was a very grouchy woman, must be the hormones, then again she might just be acting like Tayuya. Okay then, but he better not make a habit of this. Ino shouted at her husband, who simply looked up through the skylight. Tommy. You're a woman, aren't you? An expected response considering the insanity he was subjugated to. The day after. Naruto mumbled as he tried to get out of bed, but he was immediately pulled back down by his wife. Going somewhere, dear? The blonde-haired beauty venomously said as she pulled Naruto back into the bed. He sighed in exasperation as he looked at his wife, no more snoo, the mind is willing, but the body is tired and unwilling. Naruto whined, it was understandable that he wasn't up to performing after a whole night of consummating the marriage. Oh, what happened to the endless stamina you used to have? Ino smirked as she poked his chest before kissing him softly. She then giggled some as she slipped out of the bed pulling on a robe. I wasn't going to make you do any more. But I'm not letting you out of the house today. You are on hiatus from your mission for today. She sassily finished as she crossed her arms over her chest. Yes, my love. Naruto said in fear of his wife, he then lay fully on his back and stared at the ceiling for a moment, Ino then walked off quietly. Soon enough he smelled the aroma of food being cooked in the kitchen and his stomach actually twisted in fear. Now Ino was a beautiful woman and all but her cooking was little to be desired. It was so bad Naruto could hardly choke it down, he clutched his stomach in loathing of the thought of eating that cooking. No choice but to run. Naruto fearfully said as he jumped to his feet and quickly got dressed. He decided to avoid the fate worse than death and began to sneak through the large mansion. He had to reach the back where he could sneak out one of the windows. He was about there when there it was, a pair of pale blue eyes narrowed and glaring with animosity at him, a great amount of killing intent was being exuded. Going somewhere, Kibito, Ino hissed as she clenched her fist, she noticed Naruto looking a bit sheepish as he backed up in fear. His right eye twitched, he was quickly trying to think of an excuse that would be plausible and not get him hurt. It's not that you're a bad cook, just cooking isn't one of your strengths, you're best at botany, floral arrangements, and being a regular freak in bed, but your cooking isn't that good, Naruto timidly said as he fidgeted some, then he saw his wife look down as veins popped out of her forehead. Oh shit, this isn't going to end well, he quickly thought. Meanwhile, as passers-by walked past the compound, they all heard something that only signified the first incident of newlyweds. The first fight of a married couple. N.A. Ru. 2. Whack. I-tie. Sometime later Naruto was sitting at the dinner table eyeing the breakfast his wife prepared for him. He poked it quietly with his chopsticks. He had never seen an omelette like this, it was thin and folded over with vegetables, meat, and cheese inside. Naruto couldn't do much with his chopsticks, so he was about to try and eat it with his bare hands. It isn't going to kill you, Naruto. And it might help to use a fork and knife. Ino scolded her uncouth husband who was about to try and eat it with his hands. Naruto grumbled and cut off a small piece. He was slowly bringing the piece of food to his mouth. He found that it was something Ino didn't scorch or somehow ruin. Kami be praised, Ino could cook something. Naruto took another bite just to make sure it wasn't just a fluke. Sure enough, it was actually good. Naruto began to practically inhale the omelette. Soon he was looking at an empty plate and he whimpered. You honestly thought what you had before was my true cooking ability? Ino slyly said as she ruffled her husband's hair. Elsewhere, namely outside the compound. She can't keep my Haku began, but stopped when she was glared at by the Hyuga heiress, the Medicnin Sakura, and Tayuya. She quickly cleared her throat, realizing that was the worst choice of words. I mean, our Naruto-kun. Haku turned her attention back to the mansion. A vein was about to pop out of her forehead when she saw Tayumaru scratching at the front door. Oh no, she didn't. A fierce voice called out as a very irritated Hana walked up. She stormed right up to the front door and kicked it in. She was about to give Ino a piece of her mind. Making such a sweet puppy as Tayumaru stay outside was just wrong. The other three girls simply waited for all hell to break loose, and sure enough, the bickering commenced. Okay, go. Haku commanded as the three girls rushed to the mansion. The three girls rushed in. Once inside, the three were in shock as there was no Naruto in sight, and there were others who were plotting to steal Naruto away, Shizune, Kurenai, and Anko to be precise. This is awkward, Kurenai coldly commented as the group of girls collided in the dining room. They then turned their attention to where Naruto was, only to find a Naruto plushie sitting in the chair. All 8 of the women twitched in anger that Naruto ran away like that. Naruto was a good 24 blocks away when the shout echoed out from his mansion that told him they knew he was gone. And as if on cue, he heard them all shout in unison as he was far enough away to escape their wrath. Uzumaki, Naruto. Get your ass back here right now. Naruto, who had Tayumaru in his arms, made a run for it. He ran swiftly down the street and skidded to a stop, seeing Gaara and Temari. Oh fuck me sideways, he couldn't get one day to himself. Naruto hung his head in defeat. Naruto, why are you avoiding my sister? Gaara coldly asked as he approached Naruto, who was by this point twitching in fear of Gaara. He was picturing it in his head, him being bound in sand by Gaara or something worse. I just haven't had the chance. I've been forced on dates with other girls, getting married, trying to find a moment's rest. Naruto laughed nervously and raised his hands up, quietly waving them in defense. 5-minute head start before you force me to marry Temari even if I love her. Gaara nodded slowly and Naruto ran like he never ran before. He didn't need to get married the day after he got married. Naruto soon found himself being grabbed and pulled into an alley. He couldn't see who his savior was, but was thankful she was leading him to safety. Eventually they were far enough away from the insanity that Naruto could breathe safely. He then raised his head and saw who his savior was and blinked in amazement, long blonde hair tied back neatly, and the slanted eyes. It was none other than Yugito. Why did you save me from the crazy women? Naruto asked as he caught his breath. He didn't quite trust this woman. She was cold and hateful. Just then his suspicions were justified when she pulled out a kunai ready to stab him. She lunged forward and Naruto dodged the kunai, missed his heart and went right through his hand. He winced and pulled the knife out of his hand and dropped it to the ground, looking at the woman angrily. He held his hand up for her to see, hoping she would come to realization with what she was dealing with. Her jaw hung wide in shock as she witnessed the wound healing slowly. You're not human. She shouted as she took a step back. She didn't know why the Raikage gave her the mission at first, but now it was becoming all too clear. Send a monster to kill a monster. She pulled out another Kuani ready to strike him again, but he was too quick and grabbed hold of her wrist and pressed her against a wall. She then saw a look in his eyes. It was not too unlike the look she had in her eyes for so long. A look of loneliness. It hurts, doesn't it? She quietly said as she looked at him quietly, letting go of her kunai. Even if Naruto had so many friends now, the look of loneliness remained. The years of torment couldn't be erased in just a few years. They would remain with him forever. Naruto nodded his head quietly as he looked at her. You know you don't have to be alone anymore, Yugito-chan, you have me. We are after all engaged. Naruto replied as he slid his hand down from her wrist to her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. Naruto, she whispered quietly. She was becoming somewhat less hostile in his presence. She found his presence to be warm, not a threat to her in the least. She dropped her arms quietly, and then she gasped in shock when she was pulled into his arms in a gentle embrace. Tears were welling in her eyes. She had never been held in her life. She had a hard life like any Jinchuriki. I know what it's like, Yugito-chan, the years of loneliness, they don't go away. Naruto spoke softly as he rested his head against hers quietly. She began to sob quietly, and Naruto continued to hold her quietly. He stroked her head as he comforted her. She dropped all the walls she had put up over the years and clung tightly to Naruto as she cried in his arms. She was no longer afraid to be true to herself and revealed that she was just a scared girl. Naruto wiped the tears from her eyes and smiled softly at her. The girl timidly smiled for what seemed like the first time to her. Never let people tell you what you are. What you contain isn't who you are is who you are, you know. Naruto tried his best at giving her a pep talk. The girl nodded her head, she felt increasingly more comfortable around this man who was her fiancé. She even blushed a little, she had never felt so cared for, it made her feel warm and tingly inside. Naruto leaned closer to her and brushed his lips over hers as he kissed her softly, she wrapped her arms around his neck as she blushed softly. She had never been kissed because in Kumagakure people were too afraid of her, she pressed herself close to Naruto, giving into the moment. She slowly broke away from the kiss and looked to the ground, she had never experienced a kiss, and that was her first kiss. Naruto, that was so wonderful, she looked longingly into Naruto's eyes, finding the acceptance that she had wanted for so many years. She snuggled close, resting her head on Naruto's chest, she feeling safe around him, his words had managed to convince her she didn't have to go through with her mission. The way her heart was racing anymore when she was around the blonde convinced her that she couldn't do it. The truth was she had fallen for him, he acknowledged her, it was what she always needed, was to just be acknowledged as a person and not as a tool. Naruto was someone she could rely on, someone who could make her feel like a person. Naruto caressed her cheek and smiled warmly at her, he was always one to put the needs of others before his own. This was fundamentally what made him a prime candidate for Hokage. He was never the kind to be selfish or put his needs before others, this was the primary factor that made him popular with the girls. As if on cue, the moment was ruined and Anko descended from above and dragged Naruto away, taking him back to her lair to do Kami knows what with Naruto. One thing that could be said about that was, may there be mercy on his soul, for it was rumored Anko was really in need of a man. No one would be seeing Naruto for a while, but it seemed Kami hadn't truly forsaken Naruto today. Kurenai rushed forward and tackled Anko to the ground before trying to pull Naruto off towards her home. As if on cue, the other girls arrived, Gaara was no longer planning to interfere, never before in the history of girls loving Naruto has there been a spectacle such as this. Kiba said into a microphone at a table off to the side. Naruto's sweat dropped at this because it was frankly annoying. I agree, it all started back in our Genin days, and the leading veteran of the sport Yuga Hinata is still managing to give it her all. And is that your sister? Shino commented as the two were watching the all-out brawl that erupted. It made the Bouquet toss look docile, Hinata jumped building ledge, diving straight at Naruto, ready to drag him away. Before she could get away, Sakura threw a punch which Hinata knocked away with ease. Yes, that is my sister, she is a rookie to the sport, it seems as she is making the biggest mistake a rookie can make. Kiba exclaimed, watching his sister made an attempt to get Naruto away from Hinata and Sakura. The three girls entered into more serious hand-to-hand combat as Naruto crawled across the ground in an attempt to get away. Naruto had almost crawled away when Tayuya started glowering down at him, he laughed in fear and tried to run away, but the Redeed grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. She was dragging Naruto away virtually unchallenged until a girl with glasses blocked her path. "OCMON, give me a break." Naruto shouted in anger as Karin seemed insistent on stopping Tayuya from getting away with Naruto. "Look, slut, you better not be getting in the way of me and Naruto getting married because I'm not giving birth to a bastard." Tayuya shouted angrily, clenching her fist. Of course all the girls in the vicinity blanched and stepped back. She was only a few days into her pregnancy and she was already trying to kill people. Maybe that was just normal, maybe the hormones haven't started going all out of whack yet. You got a problem with that. It's not like you're going to have a baby in an hour. The girl responded before adjusting her glasses. This was none other than Karin, a former experiment of Orochimaru's that Sasuke had brought back to the village. She was a bit unstable in all honesty, but as Naruto liked to put it when Ino wasn't around, she was hot. Excuse me? Naruto tried to get the fighting to stop, but his calls were drowned out by the bickering of the women. What is it, Naruto? The two girls fighting over him in his vicinity snapped angrily at him. The classic women snapping at the guy they're fighting over. Do I get a say in this at all? I am after all the father of the baby and I thought you liked Sasuke or something, Karin. Naruto sheepishly said as he scratched his cheek in timidness of the crazy ladies. I did, but Karin took her glasses off and smirked, pulling Naruto's head against her chest, causing the blonde to turn bright red. I decided I like you much more, Naruto-kun, you are so strong and you care. She then ran her fingers through the blonde's hair, causing him to stammer. She then began to rub her chest against her face, grinning darkly, completely ignoring her competition. Naruto-kun, I would love for you to come over to my place for dinner tonight. So please say yes. She then pouted, this caused Naruto to immediately cave in as he nodded his head. Kiba, what did we just witness? Shino asked as he and Kiba continued their observations from the sidelines as self-proclaimed play-by-play announcers. That was Karin's patented seduction technique, let's go to the video playback. Before they could do such, Tamari knocked the two away with her fan, her eye twitching in anger. Naruto, you lucky son of a bit. Before Kiba could finish, he and Shino disappeared into the horizon. How dare that bitch? All of the other girls shouted in anger, but Naruto, having learned in his years of experience in dealing with Ino, knew it was time to run. So he jumped to his feet and grabbed hold of Tayuya's hand, pulling her away so they could take care of her problem. He wasn't about to be hit over the head by her. "Naruto. What the fuck?" Tayuya yelled at Naruto, ready to smack him across the back of the head. He could have at least given her warning, but Naruto didn't show any fear of her and kept leading her towards the Hokage tower for a quickie wedding, since he didn't figure Tayuya was big on ceremonies. "We're getting married, that's what the fuck." He realized all too late that he wasn't making much sense, but he didn't care. He stopped for a moment and rubbed his temples. "Look, Tayuya-chan, you want to get married, right? We're gonna get married. I want to avoid any further insane battles royale." Frankly, it stopped being funny 3 chapters ago. Chapters? What the fuck are you talking about? Tayuya's eye twitched as she raised her hand up to smack the father of the child she was expecting. "Calm down, we're getting a quickie wedding." Naruto casually said, his hands raised in defense. He didn't want the girl to hit him over the head. He saw the blood vein throbbing in her neck and sighed softly as he heard the sounds and approaching thwack. But found his ear grasped and twisted, causing him to shout out in pain. He felt like he was being treated like a womanizer. Well, he technically was. "Oh, isn't that just sweet? We can tell the kid one day that the reason why we're together is you knocked me up and we got married so he wouldn't be a bastard. Aren't you just romantic? And we can tell them that you were already married. And that on our wedding night you were on a date with a slut who came onto you like a drunk prom date." Tayuya was going into a long rant, and Naruto knew he wasn't going anywhere for a while. Luckily he had a candy bar, so he sat down and began to eat his candy bar while Tayuya continued to rant. Naruto was doing quite the good job blocking out her complaining. It was like he had some experience with it. "I love it. It will give the kid wonderful emotional scars. Every kid needs some. Just not to the degree that whiny uchiha bitch has em." The Redeed smirked and pulled Naruto in the direction of the Hokage tower. She was all for the plan. Naruto's eye once more twitched in shock. This girl was crazy, very very crazy. Moments later. "Okay, you're now husband and wife. Here's your marriage license." Tsunade handed over the paper to the two and smiled. "Ought to be young and in lust," was her only thought about it as she looked at the two in front of her. It would seem her plan to get Naruto to reproduce was already working since she heard the circumstances. "Alright, shithead. It's done. Try not to be out with bimbos all night long. Or I will convince your other wife that we should make you help us redecorate the mansion without Kage Bunshin." The in itself was a torture no man should have to endure. The frilliness and the girliness would drive any straight man sane. Sai probably thrived in that environment, and that was no generalization. People had seen Sai's bedroom, and the memory of it made Naruto cringe. Yes, dear, Naruto was once again defeated by a woman, proving that he will be the most whipped man in Konoha since Narushikaku. He was simply put doomed as Kakashi. If he ran out of porn, he might actually have to interact with a woman if that happened. It's just a dinner, what could possibly go wrong? Tsunade, Tayuya, and Shizune, who was the witness, all narrowed their eyes slightly at Naruto. They couldn't believe he was that gullible. It wasn't so much that Karin was a slut, it was that she always got what she wanted. He right, well I gotta go then, Naruto said as he rubbed the back of his head. He laughed nervously before bolting out the door. Tsunade's eye was twitching. She had no idea what kind of monster she had created. She was turning Naruto into a womanizer. "That's your dream boat running off on another date, Shizune. Doesn't that make you proud?" Tsunade had to tease her apprentice. It was the perfect setup, and it garnered a response as Shizune's eye twitched. This caused Tsunade to snicker with pleasure at the infuriation of her assistant. Later at Karin's apartment. Naruto knocked at the door. He suddenly got this chill that ran down his spine. He felt the sense of impending doom, like he had whenever Ino and Sakura were about to start fighting. "Come in." Karin called from inside, and Naruto opened the door and walked in. He looked about until he finally found her. Karin used her feminine charm to get what she wants, but it would seem that what she wanted was Naruto, because she was standing coyly off to the side in a sexy black dress. Naruto, seeing this, pinched his nose since he felt a nosebleed coming on. Impending doom indeed. Of all the girls who could make him dinner, it had to be this one. A girl that made Temari and Ino look homely. It must be the glasses. It was statistically proven girls with glasses were cute. "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" Karin asked as she set a hand on his cheek, causing him to stammer some. "Good, because I made ramen special for you." At the mention of ramen, he didn't care what angle she was working. He was essentially a prostitute when it came to ramen. Have an ugly daughter that needed a date, throw in some ramen, and he would do it. Naruto sped to the table and sat down. "Excellent, my plan is working. Soon Naruto won't be able to resist my charms. Unlike that obviously gay Sasuke. No straight man can resist me." Karin was mentally declaring the hopes of her victory. Naruto was falling right into the obvious trap set by the devious Karin. There had to be a reason why Sasuke stayed away from her, obviously. Naruto had to think for a moment what was more important, loyalty to the marriages or ramen cooked by a femme fatale. If you don't know the answer, you definitely don't know Naruto. It was the ramen. Sometime later Naruto leaned back in his chair satisfied with all he had devoured. Karin just stared in shock that he had eaten everything that she cooked. She smirked, now was the time for her to spring into action and make Naruto hers. She walked over to him and leaned close to his ear and smirked again and whispered in a husky voice, "I hope you saved room for dessert." She then wrapped her arms around his neck. "Sure. What's for dessert?" Naruto was once again proving how his libido came after his appetite. It was slowly coming to his realization that wasn't what she meant. What let him know what she meant was when she took her glasses off and set them on the table, a telltale sign she was going seduction mode. And then his realizations would catalyze when her lips brushed over his suddenly, then he felt the kiss deepen. Naruto was giving in to his baser instincts and wrapped his arms around her. He was unable to resist her any longer. Karin slowly sat on Naruto's lap. She broke away from the kiss for a moment. She nuzzled her face into his neck. "Naruto-kun, I have a special surprise for you," she slyly said as she hopped off his lap and took him by the hand, leading him to her bedroom. Naruto wasn't about to fight it. Karin was one of those girls you just couldn't say no to. She was like a beautiful goddess to Naruto. Naruto pulled the woman into his arms. "You know, with that messy black hair of yours, you're the most irresistible woman in the village," he softly said before kissing her deeply, not giving her a chance to respond. He pushed her down onto her bed and crawled onto her with a sly grin on his face. She blushed and let loose a squeak. "I unleashed a wild animal, didn't I?" she asked coyly, getting a nod from Naruto. She leaned her head up to kiss him again. Hours would pass and the two were now laying tangled in one another's limbs. Naruto was breathing heavily, as was Karin. "I might be stuck on redecorating duty, but that was totally worth it," Naruto said with a cheerfully glimmer to his eyes. Karin's face was flushed. She also had a look of satisfaction on her face. She was snuggling close to him, feeling quite happily. "I see you are the man for me, Naruto-kun. You have enough stamina for me. I don't know how many times we did it, but I think I lost count around the 8th time," she smirked as she looked at her ravaged room. Yes, it was true the two didn't relegate themselves to staying on the bed. They had their fun all over the room and apartment. "So when will you ask me to marry you?" she smirked. Since her plan had come full circle, she got Naruto into bed. I Naruto's eye twitched. That was definitely a mood killer. That's when Karin put on a pair of glasses and smirked. Naruto's eyes rolled back for a moment. There was nothing more potent than a girl with glasses. Girls with glasses had a power over guys. Naruto was no longer in a twitchy mood due to seeing Karin put her glasses on. "You ready for round 2? she huskily said as she nipped at Naruto's neck. He felt that feeling of dread go down his spine again. "Oh boy, I can tell this will just be one of those days, and I didn't get to sleep yet. Maybe if I can get some food and coffee," Naruto whined as he looked at the ceiling. He needed some coffee and some food if she expected him to do that again. He wondered why she suddenly became so fond of him. It was unsettling. Maybe her biological clock started ticking. "Okay. But then you gotta be ready for round 2. she grinned darkly, causing Naruto to freeze a bit. He was a dead man. He felt like she was using him like a sex slave. Maybe she wanted babies or something, Naruto thought to himself. It was odd that she was going to such lengths. He, if you would pardon the pun, came, he saw, and he conquered several times last night. Yet across the village at the Uzumaki mansion. "I am going to kill him." Ino twitched with anger since Naruto never came home last night. She was about ready to kill her husband for this. Tayuya was of course in the same boat. She was going to kill him for being gone all night when she specifically told him not to be out all night with bimbos. If Naruto knew what was good for him, he wouldn't come home today. But this was Naruto we were talking about. He always went into the heart of danger. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.